Hi, I'm Julie Thompson. Welcome to the Pembroke School Committee Candidate Interview. I want to take a moment to thank our candidate for participating in this interview and collaborating with PAC TV to bring this informational programming to residents and voters this election season. Let me explain the format. We will be conducting a one-on-one interview-style Q&A format with each candidate, lasting about 30 minutes. Responses will not be timed, and follow-up questions may be asked during this format. We aim to ask up to 4 questions, but that will depend on the length of the responses, along with any follow-up discussion during this exchange. Candidates will be allowed to address anything not covered or what they would like to add clarification to at the end of the interview in their closing remarks. Let's get started. Today we are speaking with Adam Murphy, one of the 4 candidates running for 2 full-term seats for the Pembroke School Committee in the Pembroke town election. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. So, question number 1. The subject of social-emotional support for both students and teachers is prevalent in budgets and conversations surrounding the entire school district. In all 3 educational levels, both elementary, middle, and high school, specifically, how do you think these efforts have been successful, and what is your vision for including them moving forward?
Well, that's a great question. I think that we definitely need to have that. That needs to be part of, it's part of our daily life now. The pandemic has certainly shown us that. We need to make sure that it's encompassed in all of our school systems. They do have a great system now that the superintendent put together, the Compass Room, and I'll probably screw this up. It's the Compass Room at the elementary level and the Titan Room at the high school level. And now they've talked about adding in the Compass Titan Room at the middle school level, which is great because now they're kind of closing that gap. We need to make sure that all of our children and the teachers that support our children have the access to that space, or have access to those rooms and stuff like that.
So aside from separate rooms that they may have set apart, or time frames that they set apart for the students, what do you think some of the strategies should be for both students and teachers moving forward to kind of monitor the social emotional health of all of them?
Well, that's great. One of the things I think we need to be looking at is how we can utilize people in our own community, such as maybe there's a mental health provider in the community that wouldn't mind donating their time to do some observing hours, or reach out to one of our local colleges that maybe has a mental health program that the kids need to do in classroom, and maybe they could do an assessment of what's going on and see a quarterly review of what's happening in each one of the schools with the teachers and in the classrooms, with the staff in the building. But the other thing that a lot of people forget about is the bus drivers that drive these kids to the school, to and from the school every day. They're affected by that same response in that emotional. We may not have the access to that. They may not have the access to that that they would need, that they would also need.
All support staff, actually.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people tend to forget that the bus drivers are there that take the kids to and from school, but when that kid comes off the bus in a bad mood, or comes out of school in a bad mood, they take that bad mood onto the bus, and that could potentially pose not only a safety problem for the driver and the other students on the bus, but a safety problem for the student itself. So I think that they need to have that access.
Also, right.
Yeah.
Do you know what percentage of kids are taking advantage of these separate rooms or spaces that kind of help kids get back into the mainstream?
I don't know the answer to that question, but what I have heard is that it's a small percentage, and I think there's a stigma that goes along with those rooms, in that some kids may think that it's kind of a punishment, but it may not be. It's just a space for them to be able to kind of reset themselves and then get themselves back out into the classrooms.
And let's just go back to teachers, supporting the teachers too, because the teachers see, not only do they have to do the curriculum and everything they have to do, but they're also having to really monitor the students in their classes for their well-being and their mental health.
Right.
What extra support do we need to give to teachers?
Well, I think that the teachers need some more training in that stuff to be able to see how exactly the triggers for a kid that might be heading down that direction. They may have some training in it, but it needs to be a little bit more advanced training in it, maybe definitely a recurring training every year, annual, or maybe a quarterly or a biannual training on it.
Okay. And you see that this is something that we should fund for the foreseeable future?
Absolutely. I think I don't think your mental health is a problem that's never going to go away. So I think we need to make sure we always have that option.
Okay. Okay. Let's go on to question number 2. The budget includes mandates, collective bargaining outcomes, facility and technology maintenance and upgrades, and dealing with the long lingering impacts of COVID. How do you approach the subject of priorities when looking at the budgets?
Well, that's great because it's such a multifaceted budget, right? There are so many areas that it covers. It definitely needs to focus on the curriculum first and then the infrastructure. The buildings are aging. They're probably approaching their shelf life and will need to be renovated again soon. We need to make sure that we're focusing, not cutting any programs that wouldn't need to be cut, right? So we don't want to take anything away from our kids. We want to make sure that they have the best option. But at the end of the day, it comes down to dollars and cents. And if we need to, get the town more involved, and I feel that's where the lack is that the town isn't as involved as it should be.
In what way?
We basically, from what I can gather, from what I've understood from the meetings that I've attended, is that we tell the town this is the budget that we're looking at, and then they decide as to what the cap is of the amount of money that there's allocated for the town. But they need to understand. I feel like the town isn't really as invested in the schools as they should be. I feel like the town is, they put their money in other places which are equally as important. But in order to attract more families to come to the town, we should have the best schools in the region, right? So they should be trying to fund us with as much money as they possibly can, or as much money as is reasonable for the town to hand over to the school system so that the kids have access to the best stuff.
All right, so clearly the school budget is made up of state funds that we get and taxpayers.
Correct.
So what about the unfunded mandates that exist?
Well, some of them, some of the unfunded mandates, maybe we have to find ways to cut corners, right? We'll have to find ways to make things work so that we can get everything that everybody wants and needs in the school system, what the state wants, but they don't want to fund. Maybe we need to put pressure on our state reps and state senators to say that these unfunded mandates either need to go, or we need to find a way for them to be funded. If you guys want to if they need to be kept in the system, then we need to find a way to fund it.
To fund them, right. Now, how do you make if you looked at any of the, you said you've been to some of the meetings, have you seen some of the presentations that the different departments made?
Yes.
For budgets? So you look at each presentation, you're like, wow, they make a great case.
They make a great pitch.
And they all do.
Yes.
So how do you circle that square and decide what's going to get funded and what's not?
That's where it becomes really difficult. You want to make sure that the kids have access to clubs and organizations, right? That's in athletics. So those are the two big things that you want to make sure that everybody feels included in the group. So you need to make sure that you have the teachers to cover all that, and the coaches and the staff and the support staff for that. You need to make sure that we've got that the student organizations have got the support that they need. So you have to pick and choose, and I think Erin, the superintendent of schools, has done a fantastic job at always presenting the options when it comes to the budget end of things. She's done a great job at showing, hey, if we do this, we may have to cut here, but this is why we're going to cut here, and she always explains it, which is great, so that it kind of lays it out for the school committee to see. I've done all this work. Here's all the work. Here's the end result. We've done our best to do it here. We just need to find where to shorten this gap if we can.
And as far as collective bargaining, unions, there's a process that you have to go through.
Right.
And many people feel that teachers and the staff in general are underpaid for what they do in the entire educational system in the whole state. How do you deal with collective bargaining?
Well, so that's a much different topic, but aside from the budget, but it's definitely an integral part of our budget. You try to do your best to make sure that their demands, and not demands, but their requests are made in a reasonable answer, right? So if they're asking for 7%, maybe we can't afford 7%. Maybe we can only afford 4.5%. So we would have to negotiate, and it just becomes a long negotiation, and that's what it is. You just have to be open. I feel like you have to be open-minded to talk to collective bargaining groups or anybody really in town.
Okay. We'll go on to question number 3. There is much discussion and a few options on the table regarding vocational education offerings for Pembroke students. What is your opinion on each option that's currently being looked at, and when do you think one will come to fruition, if at all?
Okay, so this has obviously been a very hot topic item in town lately, and I'm a full supporter of VocTech education. I was not a college graduate. I started out in the trade that I'm in, and I've been doing it for 23 years now. There are many options on the table. I think that the option of forming the committee that is non-binding, there is no fiscal responsibility to anybody. Forming that committee doesn't hurt anything, right?
And how is that going to be done?
So that committee gets formed by approval at a town meeting in May.
Okay.
It's
And
the
it's an
article.
exploratory.
It's an exploratory
Okay.
committee.
Yep.
So this committee will look at all the financial responsibility
Yep.
of the town, what
Yep.
the town's cut of the VocTech education would be.
So VocTech is one of the options. The South Shore VocTech.
South Shore VocTech
Okay.
is probably our best option.
Can you explain a little bit what is that for anyone who doesn't know? What
Sure.
is the South Shore VocTech?
South Shore
option?
VocTech is a school system in Hanover, Mass, and they have I believe it's 8 partner schools or 8 partner towns: Rockland, Cohasset, and Hanover, to name a few. Whitman and Hanson are in there as well. But they have access to welding and fabrication school. They have access to an electrical school. They have access to culinary arts, allied health. So any kid that maybe doesn't want to go to college or doesn't know what their career path is, or they know they just want to get into the workforce when they're 18,
Yep.
they would have the option to go to the school. Right now, they don't have that option.
Yeah.
Right. So they're only allowing X amount of seats in town, and for each one of the member towns. And then, if there are any leftover seats, maybe a Pembroke kid would get in if he met the criteria.
Okay.
And that's a very
Right.
hard maybe.
It's a hard
And
stretch, right.
it's like a 8% chance of the kid actually
So
making it
this
in.
exploratory committee is going to do what is their?
So they're going to look at the background of the town itself, the makeup, and see how many kids have shown interest in going to VocTech. They're going to look at the financial responsibility that would come to the town. So South Shore VocTech is in the process of getting money from the state to either build a new building or renovate the current building they're in, which would expand their
Yep.
seat capacity
Yep.
to over 1,000, or just about 1,000 kids. And this committee would look at what would end up being our financial cut as to whether or not it would be fruitful for the town to get involved in it.
Yep.
Or would it be better for us to look at a different avenue? South Shore VocTech has been the only school, as far as I can understand it, has been the only school that has shown any interest in us becoming a member town.
Now, what about Silver Lake? When Pembroke broke away from Silver Lake, it was kind of an understanding that the students from Pembroke would also be able to take advantage of the Silver Lake
In Silver Lake,
facilities.
yeah.
What's up with that?
So as far as I understand with that, Silver Lake has kind of gone against their agreement with the school system and has said it basically we're not accepting any Pembroke kids, and one of the reasons is they have a very large number of kids in their member towns.
Yeah.
So again, the kids in Pembroke have now lost out because so many other kids are following the same path that these kids want to follow.
Sure.
So they don't really have the
They
opportunity
don't have
anymore.
those seats right now.
Right.
And do you have any idea, time frame wise, how long this will take for the town to come to a conclusion?
So the committee will form, and it'll take probably 6 months or so for them to figure out their financial responsibility in whether or not it would be fiscally responsible for the town to get involved.
Yep.
It's not going to be a very quick process. Right? I'd be lying if I said it would be quick. Right? I think we're looking maybe 2025 to get a couple of kids in a year, and then after that would be when South Shore Voc Tech finally finishes their building. If we became a member town, we'd be looking probably 2028, 2029.
Okay, so
if
it's
I
a
remember
little way down the road.
But
Okay.
it would be good for us to start that conversation now and have that pathway in place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, question number 4. If someone asked you to describe the educational experience that a student would have in the town of Pembroke, what would you say are its greatest strengths and the most critical areas that might need improvement?
Okay, so some of the greatest strengths is the staff, right? That is probably single-handedly the greatest strength is the staff. It's the teachers, it's the support staff, it's the bus drivers. When you show up and you pull up in front of the school and all the teachers have a smile on their face and then they're welcoming of the kids and the kids look happy when they go in and they look happy when they come home, that's a huge part of it. That's definitely part of it. You know, the education is great. I have a daughter who's in the kindergarten program. Granted, it's only her first time ever, but she loves going to school, and she comes home and blows my wife and I away with the stuff that she learned, even in just a day. So, you know, the curriculum is great. The teachers do a great job teaching it. You know, the students have fun. There's a lot there. Some of the downfalls that I've seen in you know, I come from one of the parts of my background is in safety and security. I do see some safety and security issues in the building, not glaring that I think that there would be a major problem, but there is definitely room for some improvement there in the security and safety in the buildings.
Okay, and we'll talk about that in my final question.
Sure.
Other than that, the K through 6 is in, you know, elementary. Then we have 7th and 8th
Yep.
in the middle school, and then 9 through 12
Yes.
in the high schools. Have you heard or do you have any indication that, boy, our elementary is really, really, really up there. Our middle might need a little help, and our high school is average with the other towns around the area. In other words, there's people that have the kids that go through the whole system will then have opinions on what elementary was, what middle was, and what the high school experience was.
Yep.
And it's usually the same thing you said. It's always the staff that people just literally rave about. I mean,
Right.
the staff is just incredible. Let's talk about staff for a second.
Sure.
How do we keep and maintain our staff when being a teacher, or even anyone who works in the school system, is getting tougher and tougher to do?
It's really, you know, we have to give them the option of finding, you know, whatever it is that we need to do to keep them on staff. So we work in my career, I've worked with retention of employees, and it's very difficult. It's not the easiest thing, but small things go a long way, believe it or not. Like small things like an appreciation day, you know, take all the teachers out to lunch, or whatever, you know, whatever we can find to do, even if the cost is minimal, or even if the cost is larger. If it's something we have to do, then it's really something that we need to do to keep them engaged and keep the children engaged, keep the parents engaged, keep the teachers engaged in the whole system. There's a lot that goes into running a school, and I think a lot of people just think you drop your kid off at the door and there's the teacher and that's the end of the day. But it's really not. There's a lot of people that are involved in that, to retain them, and it's very difficult. It's probably one of the most difficult jobs I think that we have as a town and as a school committee. You would have to keep everybody in the doors.
Yeah, and every town is going through that. Let me do the final question I have for you. I want to ask about security.
Sure.
And you had brought this up. Obviously, there's a heartbreaking situation going on in our country with school violence, a subject that all school systems have to take incredibly seriously. What rating or grade would you give Pembroke in their preparation and handling of security in all of our different schools?
So I would actually go with, I'm going to go right in the middle of the road with a C.
Okay.
I think there is definitely room for improvement. They do a phenomenal job with making sure the doors are locked all the time, making sure the access points are controlled, but there is definitely room for improvement. There are, you know, we would need to lean on the town a little bit to get some funding, either through a grant or through town funding or through you know, the police department, to make sure that the buildings had camera systems that are locked, that nobody can infiltrate, camera systems that can be linked to the Mass State Police and the Plymouth County Sheriff's Office, so that, God forbid there ever was an incident, they can get that live feed. And right now, if you walk around any of our school buildings, or some of our school buildings, I should say, you won't see a camera anywhere, and that's definitely probably the biggest hole that I can see from an access control point, is that you don't have cameras where they can see everything, and there could be a live feed, real-time access. So
do the school systems that you know that have these systems that are tied into their local police or state police or whatever,
Yep.
sheriff's department, are they part of a conglomerate of security for schools, or does each individual town have to kind of foot the bill on setting that whole thing up?
So unfortunately, each individual town would have to foot the bill, but there are grants that you can go after through FEMA as well as Department of Homeland Security that will fund this and would send the information directly to a mobile command center if they were to set something up. It would probably behoove the town to actually get involved town-wide, not just in the school system, because if there was ever an incident in, say, the public library, they could do the same as well there. So that would be where we would need to lean on the town to say, you guys we need your help to get this in here and get this done.
Right.
So we would have, unfortunately, yes, the town would have to foot the bill for it.
Okay. And the town right now has drills that they run kids through, lockdowns. Can you talk about the elementary, the middle, and the high school, and how you think they're done, and how effective you think they are, and what do they do to the kids?
So I have to say, I find it to be a sad state of affairs that we ever had to get to this point. It's a necessity that we did get to this point. What I will say is that my daughter knows exactly what she needs to do in her classroom, and it doesn't seem to scare her, which is, again, another topic for another day, but it doesn't seem to scare her. So I feel like the teachers are doing a great job at really drilling that down and making it like, they know, the kids know it's a serious thing. They know they have to do it. Do I think we could do it more often? Absolutely. I do think we should be doing those drills a little bit more than I think they already are now, which I think I'd have to look and see how often they're doing it. But I do think it has an impact as the kids get older. Either they become lackadaisical to it because they just get used to doing it, and then they don't really understand the severity of what they're actually practicing.
And the high school obviously is a whole different population, because it is often high school students themselves that start or create some violence. So how do you rate how the high school does it, and would you make any changes in how they prevent things from happening and how they prepare students for watching out for what is happening around them?
So there are a lot of great things that people can look at, online, in particular online. There are training courses everywhere that you can take. I haven't actually witnessed an active shooter drill, for example, or a mass casualty drill at the high school level. But in my industry, we drill on it on a regular basis. We drill on it quarterly. We don't tell anybody when it's happening. We just do it. So I think that we just need to be able to kind of every once in a while just bring it up to the kids and say, hey, if you guys see something that looks out of the ordinary, please let us know, right? The old see something, say something adage, it really does. It does go a long way. I've seen it proven and worked really well. So, I think that see something, say something is always a big thing, but I think the kids have to understand what they're looking at, right? So they need to know that they need to look for the kid that's, 85 degrees outside, fully dressed in a raincoat, a trench coat, coming in the building, so.
Okay. All right, so in the last couple of minutes, why don't you give your closing remarks, say anything that we didn't talk about that maybe you want to, and you can speak directly to this camera here.
Okay, great. So for those who actually don't know me, my name is, again, Adam Murphy. I lived here in town and moved into town in 2019. I spent 23 years in the marine transportation industry with a background in safety and security. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody for watching this today, as well as thank you for the opportunity to run for the school committee in town. We have a lot of work to do and a lot of pressure to put on the town itself, as well as our state representatives and our state senators to get the support that we need in the small town of Pembroke. And I'm hoping to be the voice that could do that for the town, as well as just be a fresh set of eyes and a fresh voice on the school committee this year.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Adam, for participating in this interview. We wish you the best of luck throughout your campaign and in the election. For our viewers, thank you for joining us. If you're interested in watching replays of this interview, please visit our website, pactv.org, for replay times and online viewing options, including PAC TV's on-demand and streaming service, PAC TV Prime. And please make your choices heard by voting in the town election on Saturday, May 13th. Thank you and good day.